Look at these giants sitting in the desert. These planes used to rule the skies.
Boeing ending production of its iconic 747 jumbo jet.
Queen of the skies will soon be the queen of the desert.
And for 50 years, if you crossed an ocean, you probably did it in one of these.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
When Boeing 747 first flew in 1969, people couldn't believe something that big could even take off because it seemed physically impossible. Then Airbus built one even bigger than that, which had 2 full decks and became the largest passenger plane ever built. And airlines couldn't get enough of them, which led to one of the biggest production runs in aviation history. And by the 1990s, multiple 747s took off every hour somewhere in the world, which meant the skies were filled with these giants operating around the clock. Boeing delivered 92 747s in 1970, which was their peak production year. So these weren't rare aircraft at all. But look at this now. Because Boeing's 747 line shut down in 2023, which means no more are being built. The A380 production ended even earlier, and they built the last one in 2021. But these smaller twin-engine planes are a completely different story, because manufacturers can't build them fast enough to keep up with demand. I wanted to understand how we went from bigger is better to bigger is dead. So I dug into the numbers and industry reports, and what I found wasn't what I expected at all. Because the story is way more complex than just fuel efficiency or changing technology. Let's go back to the 1960s. If you look at this chaos at Los Angeles Airport, you can see it was completely jammed with aircraft. Air travel was exploding during this decade, with passenger numbers growing at 10 to 20% annually, which meant airports were completely overwhelmed by this unprecedented surge in demand. But here's the problem they faced. Because every plane that existed looked like this, with a narrow body, single aisle, and capacity for maybe 150 people maximum. So airlines and airports had a choice to make, which was either build more airports and runways, or build bigger planes that could carry more passengers per flight. Cities like New York, London, and Tokyo had no space for more runways, because you can't just bulldoze Manhattan or tear down neighborhoods to expand airports. Look at it this way to understand the math. Because to move 1,000 people, you need 10 flights with narrow planes, or you could do it with just 2 flights if you had something massive enough. So in 1966, Pan Am CEO Juan Trippe walked into Boeing's headquarters and said something that sounded completely crazy at the time. He told them to build him a plane twice as big as anything that exists, which seemed like an impossible request. The 707 carried 150 people, but Trippe wanted 400 people in one plane, which was an unprecedented jump in capacity. Boeing's engineers thought he was insane when they heard this, because nobody knew if something that big could even fly, or if the physics would work out. It would need 4 engines to get off the ground, and each one would have to be more powerful than anything that existed in commercial aviation. Boeing bet everything on this project, which is why they built the world's largest building just to assemble it, and the factory itself became an engineering marvel. They invested $2 billion in 1966, which translates to $18 billion in today's money when you adjust for inflation. If the 747 failed, Boeing would go bankrupt, which meant the entire company would cease to exist and thousands would lose their jobs. Then, on February 9th, 1969, the moment of truth arrived. You can see the concentration on the pilot's face as he prepared to find out if this gamble would pay off. It flew successfully, and that single flight changed everything about how we think about air travel and what's possible in aviation. Look at this interior shot, because you're seeing 400 people in one plane, which was revolutionary for the time. This shows the same number of passengers being moved, but with 1/4 of the flights, which completely solved the airport congestion problem. And because you could pack more people per flight, ticket prices dropped 40% over this decade, which democratized air travel. Flying stopped being something only rich people could afford, because it became normal for middle-class families to book trips. Families who'd never flown before were suddenly booking trips to Europe and other continents, which opened up the world in ways that weren't possible before. The cost to fly one person 1 mile dropped by half during this period, and that's the difference between flying once a year versus flying whenever you want for business or pleasure.